Okay. Alright, today I will be showing you guys how to manually take a blood pressure. Blood pressure is measured to see how hard your heart is working to move blood, oxygen, and other nutrients throughout your body. Knowing how to measure a blood pressure manually can increase detection of conditions such as hypertension or high blood pressure, which if left untreated can lead to strokes and death. In this demonstration, I will tell you what equipment you will need, explain the procedure of measuring a blood pressure, and tell you what your blood pressure can indicate. According to the Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute of the National Institutes of Health, taking a blood pressure manually by auscultation is the most reliable method used to measure blood pressure. To read a blood pressure manually, you'll need two devices. A stethoscope, which is made up of several different parts. The bell of the stethoscope has two diaphragms. The much larger side is the one that we usually use, and you put it on the person's body so that you can hear sounds. The tubing of the stethoscope transmits sounds from the bell into the ear tubes, which are curved slightly forward and are designed for comfort. The ear tips are placed in the ear, and they seal the ear canal so that you can hear the noises from the diaphragm and not the outside noises. You will also need a blood pressure cuff. The blood pressure cuff is secured to the person's arm, and the pump is squeezed to inflate the cuff, which is located the pump is squeezed to inflate the bladder, which is located in the cuff. The valve is closed so that air stays in and is open to release the air. The gauge of the blood pressure cuff is measured in 2 millimeters of mercury increments, and the needle in the gauge will tell you what your blood pressure is as the air fills up and is released. So, now I will show you how to measure Miranda's blood pressure. Okay, so you're going to secure the blood pressure cuff to the person's arm. You want to make sure that the bottom of the cuff is about 1 inch above the crease of the elbow. With your index and middle finger, you want to locate the brachial artery right here, and make sure that the indicator on the cuff is pointed to that location. So now you're going to locate the radial artery, which is on the thumb side of the wrist, and you're going to pump up the cuff until you no longer feel the radial artery, the pulse, sorry. And then that's the number that you need to pump the cuff up to whenever you take the blood pressure, but you also want to pump up 20 points more than that number so that you can get an accurate blood pressure reading. So now you put the stethoscope, earpieces in your ear. Then you place the diaphragm of the stethoscope on the brachial artery that you located earlier. You're going to pump the cuff up to the number plus 20 millimeters of mercury and slowly release. The first number you hear is the systolic pressure. Whenever you hear, the first heartbeat you hear is the systolic pressure. And whenever you hear the heartbeat drop off, that's the diastolic pressure. The systolic is the top number of your blood pressure. The diastolic is the bottom number of your blood pressure. So the first beat that you hear is the force of blood against the vein during contraction of the heart. This is the top number of your blood pressure. The bottom number of your blood pressure is the diastolic pressure, which is the pressure against the vein while your heart is at rest. Now that you know how to take a blood pressure, let's talk about what the importance of blood pressure measurements are. Blood pressure measurements can diagnose conditions that can be life-threatening, and they can give a better understanding of a person's overall health. High blood pressure, hypertension, is a consistent reading over 130 systolic and 80 diastolic. Hypertension is a common chronic health condition that affects people over the age of 65 mostly, but it can affect anyone. Having a high blood pressure for months or years and not being treated is the biggest dangers of the condition, and it can hurt your heart or cause your heart to fail. On the other end of the spectrum, a low blood pressure can be okay for some, but for others it can be an underlying signal to other problems. A systolic blood pressure lower than 90 or diastolic pressure lower than 60 may be a sign of conditions such as endocrine problems, dehydration, blood loss, blood infections, severe allergic reactions, brain damage, or lack of nutrients in the diet. Depending on a multitude of accompanying symptoms, a low blood pressure can be life-threatening as well. Knowing how to measure your blood pressure manually can teach you a lot about a person. If you have a stethoscope and a blood pressure cuff, you can measure a person's blood pressure manually anytime, anywhere. You can help a loved one monitor their pressures, and you can even save someone you were just practicing on. Being able to measure blood pressure manually gives one a sense of accomplishment because not everyone knows how to do it. It is the gold standard of measurement by the National Institutes of Health and one of the best ways to diagnose some serious health conditions. No one's ever died from learning how to manually measure a blood pressure, but you can save someone's life without even knowing it.